Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Oh, huge response to that conversation with Emily there from the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. They have issues with the Gardaí getting tasers, but complete and absolute disagreement from our listeners who listened to that conversation this morning. One listener saying, "Good morning, Fran, just listening to your guest. I'm sorry, but this woman is talking, in my opinion, utter rubbish. What does she want from the Gardaí? They're often in dangerous situations, and personally I believe this is a good thing and hopefully will be seen as a deterrent." James is in New Inn. He says it's amazing that Emily thinks she has some say in what the Gardaí use for their own protection. Typical leftist NGO, absolute tripe, says somebody. Another listener, take that one. I mean, it's a conversation that we're putting out there, and she was making her point, and you can agree or disagree. Anyway, this listener goes on to say she's not on this planet. If somebody is so bad that they need to be tasered, give it to them. A child of 5 knows right from wrong, and bad behaviour needs to be dealt with. Fran, I don't mean to sound mean, but this goes on to be mean anyway. Emily from that NGO has no idea what she's talking about. Tasers are a positive step forward to deal with violent drug users who do not comply with the Gardaí, and it goes on and on. And one final one for you though: go to Spain, Fran, or any other country where you see armed police and you see respect there. Anyway, 083 311 3311. Now, the Labour Party's spokesperson on Justice, Tipperary's Alan Kelly, has accused Minister Jim O'Callaghan of misleading the House and has demanded further explanation for why he provided incorrect information to the Dáil on the full remuneration package of former Garda Commissioner Drew Harris. And Deputy Alan Kelly joins me now. Good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, Fran.
And thanks for your time this morning. You put down a parliamentary question in October looking for information on that remuneration deal for the former Commissioner. Now, you got an incomplete answer from the Minister, even by his own admission. What did he leave out?
Well, firstly, just to say that I am in favour of Gardaí having tasers. Just for your previous listeners, obviously they'd have to be trained and have to be using them in certain circumstances and situations. But by and large, I believe that is a positive step, and that I hope the trial period goes well.
Well, our listeners would completely agree with you where that is concerned.
Yeah,
nobody has said otherwise, in fact, this morning.
Yeah, I can't ever countenance seeing the situation we saw in Dublin that time, where there was guards literally isolated and fearing for their safety and no capacity to defend themselves. It was just, we can't put up with that. In relation to your question, basically I put in 2 parliamentary questions, and both times it wasn't the fact that the information was incomplete. Basically I was misled, and I'm speaking with the Minister in about an hour's time on this issue in the floor of the Dáil. So he didn't give me the full remuneration package of the Commissioner. I asked about this because I felt that it needed to be put out there, and essentially he refused on 2 occasions to tell me that the accommodation of the former Commissioner in a very nice house in the Phoenix Park was being paid for the duration of his stay there, a house that was done up for 400,000. There were also other costs associated with the house, which I'll wait for the Minister to tell me about, and other expenses. But essentially, the reason I had to bring this out, and I have to compliment my colleague Owen Kenny, who's on the Public Accounts Committee, who asked the OPW about it, and that's how we finally got it out. Countless times you listen to your GRA representatives, and who I often speak to, and all the guards who are sent to Dublin straight after coming out of Templemore, many people from Tipperary, and they're meant to live on 40,000 a year, pay rent, feed themselves and do everything else. Garda Commissioner was on $250,000 a year, and his accommodation beside the Phoenix Park was being paid for in full by the taxpayer. But for 7 years, every minister and on Garda Síochána refused to reveal this. That's not acceptable, and it's not acceptable that a minister would mislead me on it. And I've had.
And are you certain that Jim O'Callaghan, Alan, had knowledge of this?
simple fact of the matter, Fran, is this. You're a minister. You're accountable to Dáil Éireann. Every question that's asked, you're accountable for that question. Your name's at the bottom of the piece of paper. He told me on the record of the Dáil, the House of the People, that there was no rent. He didn't put it into the answer. So on that basis, yes, he is accountable. He told, in fairness to your colleague Donald, who asked him the question in Clonmel the other day, he said he knew nothing about it. That's laughable. That's like saying basically a Minister for Housing can come in to Dáil Éireann and say, oh, sure, look, I knew nothing about this, that or the other, and the housing crisis is terrible. Like, ministers are accountable. And if he didn't know, he's got a serious problem in his own department. An absolute serious problem in his own department. I'm an opposition spokesperson. Trust me when I say that department does look at my parliamentary questions, probably with a larger eye than most others because of the fact I'm a spokesperson. And the fact that they twice refused to reveal this is really seriously concerning and worrying.
And that excuse that it was a deal between the Gardaí, Alan, and the OPW themselves. So it was sort of almost a kind of a sideline deal to the department, was it not?
But the Commissioner is actually paid by the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Other Gardaí are paid by An Garda Síochána through the An Garda Síochána vote, which is given by the Minister for Justice. But the Commissioner is paid by the Department of Justice. And when I started off in this Dáil term, I actually approached the Minister. I got fine with Jim, and no issue there. I asked questions in relation to another issue, and he sent me the wrong information. And I actually met him, and I told him his information was wrong. He sent me a letter apologising and giving me the information. I had to go back to him another time and tell him the second piece of information was also wrong.
So is this an indication that something is the matter in the department itself then?
Yeah, it's also a simple fact that the Minister isn't in control of the policing section of his own department. And, you have to remember that the office I'm speaking to you from now in Dáil Éireann is the same office that I rang Jim O'Callaghan and told him that in relation to the Evan Fitzgerald case, that the guns in the boot of the car were actually put there by An Garda Síochána. He's the Minister for Justice. I'm the opposition spokesperson. I rang the Minister for Justice and I told him that, and he didn't know it. So there are multiple occasions where the Minister doesn't seem to be in control, on top of his brief, be briefed by his own officials. There are serious issues in that section of the department, in my opinion, and it's not good enough, it's not acceptable, and basically the Minister is accountable to Dáil Éireann, and if he continues on this pathway, he's in a serious trouble. He's in serious bother, because you can't continuously come into Dáil Éireann and mislead the Dáil. You can't continuously come into the chamber and basically give inaccurate information. That means that a minister is, on a slippery wicket. Now, I personally get on fine with Jim. I support some of the stuff he's doing. For instance, I support the tasers. I support issues in relation to body cams. I support other issues. But the bottom line for me is this. I know hundreds of guards. I speak to the guards on the streets here in Dublin. I speak to the guards who are outside here on Leinster House regularly. And they are struggling so bad to actually fulfil their jobs and live in Dublin. It's basically impossible.
Well, is that not a separate? Is that not a very separate issue, though? Because obviously, you can have your own thoughts on whether Drew Harris was the right person for the job, or indeed what he contributed to the Gardaí. But it doesn't take away from the fact that you're looking for the best person possible to lead our police force, and remuneration then should sort of indicate that.
100%. I have no issue with that, Fran. My bottom line here is this. Why was it necessary to pay, and by the way, conservatively, $250,000? Conservatively, it's actually probably way more than that. Why was it necessary for someone on $250,000 a year to get free rent? That's the first question.
Well, they said he was coming in, obviously, from outside of the state.
Well, he was coming in from up the road. But the second question, the previous Garda Commissioner, by the way, stayed in Donal Coulon, who's from the west of Ireland. He actually stayed in the quarters, in headquarters. He didn't need out. But the issue here is this. Why conceal it? Why not tell anybody for 7 years until I had to drag it out over 6 months with my colleague Owen Kenny? Why do that? And secondly, how can you...
Sorry, answer your own question there, Alan. Why conceal it? Why do you think it was concealed?
Because they didn't want the public to know. It's as simple as that. It's embarrassing. The idea that you're actually paying this amount of rent for a Garda commission and $250,000 a year, while Gardaí, rank and file Gardaí, are struggling to pay their mortgages, are commuting up and down in Dublin, are sleeping in cars. That's why. It's simple. Listen to the GRA on this. Listen to ordinary rank and file Gardaí and ask them what they think of this. There's your answer.
Of course, it's a different setup now with the new commissioner. I mean, there's not accommodation involved in the deal for him, even though he's on a considerable salary. I think what is it now? 300 plus? Is it 300?
Yes, so well over 300,000. So yeah, he's based in Dublin. But I also have to ask the question, Fran. Like, when this competition took place, you and I, normal people, were going for a job, same job, and there's an amount of money for that job. Everybody has to earn a wage, all of that sort of stuff. But then there's also a top-up, which means you're getting your accommodation for nothing. Like, if that's part of the advertisement, it affects your decision-making on whether you go for that job. But that wasn't part of this advertisement. So did we get the best person? We'll never know.
He promised to write to you. Has he written to you yet?
I just received it there. I was literally walking into the office when you rang. I just received it. I've only glanced at the letter, but it isn't anything that I didn't expect. It's the same as what he said to Donald there on Tipp FM when he interviewed him in Clonmel, and the same utterances that he said in the public. So I'll be speaking with the Minister in less than an hour's time inside the Dáil, where I expect that he'll say the same thing, but I'm hoping that he will also answer for why his department is basically dysfunctional and not answering questions properly. This can't go on, Fran. It just can't go on. A minister, I'm here close to 20 years. A minister can't keep walking into the Dáil and giving wrong information. It's not sustainable. I don't care who he is or she is.
Can I ask you about health? Because that meeting between the health minister and Oireachtas members from the Midwest last week, it's heightened uncertainty about government plans to address the whole emergency care crisis. But Jennifer Carroll McNeil appeared to rule out progressing with the Model 3 hospital in Nina or Ennis. So of the three options, she appears to have ruled that out. Is that your reading of it?
Fran, here's a very interesting point to note. I wasn't invited to the meeting.
You weren't invited?
No. And neither was my colleague Conor Sheehan in Limerick. We've written to her. We haven't received a reply back as to why. So I don't know what went on at the meeting because I wasn't invited, which is an insult to the people of North Tipperary, which, frankly speaking, it's the topic that I've spoken on most of my political career. I have a poster up in my office about marching through the streets in Nina, no to Hanley, which is the reason I got involved in politics. It's something I'm very passionate about. But no, I wasn't invited. But look, I can read between the lines. I've spoken to people. Look, this government and this minister has a chance of a lifetime. We're a wealthy country. The bottom line here is we need a new Model 4 hospital, at least a Model 3, probably a Model 4 hospital in the Midwest. And doing the whole HICWA issue for me is just a runaround. I don't believe it was necessary. But if you use the basis of what they said, I mean, option A is going to be built. It's in planning. Option B is basically where they're going to put 100 beds near the hospital. For me, I have no issue with that. My issue is that if they're going to do that, they need to build a hospital around it. And the minister, and they also have to obviously upgrade Innes and Nina and a lot of community services as well. We are discriminated in the Midwest. We have been discriminated for 20 years. The consultants who drove the agenda have disappeared off the face of the earth. The people, they told us that this is all going to be fine. The politicians who did it, Fianna Fáil, who made the decision, all disappeared off the face of the earth. We have, if you look at the front page of the Limerick Leader, Fran, I don't know if you saw it this week, it is stark. It shows beautiful young women who died inside UHL. It is stark. I printed it off. It is absolutely stark. I have to commend the paper for the way in which they expressed the whole issue in one headline, in one front page. And I would ask anyone who's listening to buy it and look at it because, my God, it's a brilliant piece of journalism. But ultimately here, we all know what has to happen. The minister can make herself a hero. She can have a defining moment for hundreds of thousands of people in the Midwest. It's up to her to make that decision. But at this moment in time, I don't believe she has the capacity to deliver that within government. I will be the first person to thank her if she does. But that ultimately, for me, you go down to southeast, you've got Model 3 or 4 hospitals in Waterford, Kilkenny, and Wexford. And that doesn't even include South Tipperary. And we in the Midwest have one. And we have a larger population if you include a piece of North Cork. So it's as obvious as the nose in my face what has to happen here. I know that we need short-term, medium-term solutions. I accept all of that. I have no issue with those being delivered. But long-term, I've got children. I don't want them to be in the same scenario as I am when they're my age, where we're still in a situation where we don't. I mean, the idea of having one emergency theatre access point in the Midwest is frankly bonkers. It's disgraceful. It's bananas. It's the most stupid thing ever. And the idea that we can go on for another multiple of decades with that is absolutely unacceptable. And I've said it in the Dáil, I will not be part of another generation of politicians who isn't going to shout stop.
We're going to hear a decision on that before Christmas, I understand. Is that correct?
Well, the Minister has said to me that she wanted to make a decision. She wanted to get support from the Department of Public Expenditure. So hopefully Fianna Fáil's Minister for Public Expenditure will be able to deliver on this. That's the bottom line here. We have the money. Why are the people who are listening to your show all around North Tipperary, all around Limerick, Clare and North Cork, why are we all being discriminated against? And we are being discriminated against. We've been treated as second-class citizens when it comes to healthcare. We have the money. I'm not saying this will be delivered overnight, but we have the money. Put in place a plan and let's deliver.
Just finally, yesterday, your party, Labour, used its private members' time to introduce a motion to improve trans health care and gender-affirming care in Ireland, Alan. Now, much reaction to this on social media. I'm sure you're aware of this, but many making the point that, well, we should have empathy, obviously, and understanding for the trans community. This is a tiny number of people. Would the party not be better employed by highlighting huge issues around general mental health with our young people, physical health for our children, all of those big issues, including what we were talking about there, where health is concerned?
Yeah, but we've done all of that, Fran. We've used all the parliamentary time in relation to all of those issues. I mean, I'm constantly talking about health. I'm constantly talking about policing. I'm constantly talking about housing. And these are some very small amounts. Just because it's a small group of people, Fran, doesn't mean they should be left out.
And nobody's saying they should be left out, but I suppose putting the spotlight on a very small number of people. I mean, you know what we have where our children are concerned, and mental health issues and CAMS and all of the lack of services out there.
And we have used our time in relation to mental health services. We are the only party. I think we've done 3 private members' bills when it comes to autism. I don't think any other political entity has spoken as much on autism as we have. It's an issue that I face all the time, and I've dealt with it. And these people are in very vulnerable situations, and basically the services that are there simply are unacceptable. So that's what was highlighted yesterday. And there is another issue which I think we need to highlight, and you might say it's a minority as well, Fran, and that's the fact that I think we really have to stand up and start shouting stop when it comes to the way people who come into this country, who are migrants, who are working, who are in our care homes, who are in our hospitals, who are in our hospitality services, who are looking after our elderly people, the way some of them are being thrown into a mix and being shouted at, being abused, being roared at, and yet we as a nation, the whole country would stop without them. Somebody needs to start calling that out for those minority as well, because we need all of these people, and we need more, because we simply do not have enough workers in this country to do the jobs. You talk about healthcare. The biggest issues in relation to healthcare in many parts of this country is we don't have enough workers. Right? We have hundreds of migrants in our county working in healthcare. Probably up to maybe more than hundreds, probably up to 1,000. And these people need to be looked after, need to be embraced, and need to be welcomed, because our country, our care, the care of our elderly, the care of people inside in hospitals, the people who go out and do work on low-paid jobs, which in many cases Irish people are not, there's enough people to do it anymore, to be fair. We need to start talking about that and having a conversation about that, because I'm sick and tired of some of the commentary I see from, anonymous thugs in some cases, commenting on people who actually get up every morning and do a day's work. We sent enough people abroad to work. to fill in for jobs
But you're
that weren't being done.
most right-thinking people, Alan, would go along with you where that is concerned. But I suppose we can't ignore the fact that we have a huge housing issue out there that has to be dealt with because there's nowhere for these people to live.
That's a separate issue, though. I 100% agree with you. And by the way, I don't think that housing issue is going to be solved today or tomorrow. But because I believe that this government for the last 10 years has failed on it, because our water infrastructure simply doesn't exist. It's not built because it was let down, our water and waste infrastructure, and a whole range of other issues in relation to power, in relation to a whole range of other issues. And that is a complete and utter failure. Having said that, though, so you look at the equation. So do we stop bringing in these workers because we can't provide housing for them? And do we let people who need care in nursing homes and in hospitals and all of that, the health service, collapse? Which is the choice? But that's not the way it should work, though, Fran. We have to solve both. We need to provide care for our elderly. We need to provide people in our hospitals. We need to provide workers who will deliver for the hospitality industry and for everything else. We need these workers who come in, who work in high-level IT jobs, to be able to have situations where we can have other people working in other jobs. We need all of these people who work because there's jobs there. It's not about displacement. We have very low employment records, thanks be to God. But the bottom line is we have a massive housing issue, and the massive housing issue is a broader and bigger issue. You can't have a scenario whereby, okay, we've such a massive housing issue that we're going to now stop these people who are working, who are coming in here, who are paying their taxes, who are making their contribution, to basically allow our health service to collapse, our hospitality industry collapse. My wife is from South Kerry. Without basically workers coming in, the whole hospitality industry in Kerry, which they depend on, will collapse. So we've got to get real about this situation, and we've got to make sure. And by the way, in relation to other people who come into the country who shouldn't be here, I have no issue in saying once they go through the process, they should be put out of this country. I have no issue with that at all. It's a tiny, tiny amount, by the way, by comparison to the amount of workers that comes into this country. And my issue is, for the first time in my career, I'm having people contact me and come into my office who are working in our towns across North Tipperary, and they're actually having issues walking down the street and a bit afraid and are concerned, and that has to stop.
All right, now, you know what people are going to scream at me here to say that, in general, people are afraid in our towns and cities and our villages now because there's antisocial behaviour out there. I mean, we've heard it from ordinary people here.
That goes back to our first conversation, Fran. Yeah. That goes back to our first conversation in relation to policing. I mean, the Minister has come out now and said that in relation to policing, that high visibility in Dublin has worked and now he's going to transfer it. Do you know what? Our Garda numbers are not growing because we've got the balance of your retirements, and there's so many people who basically, unfortunately, are not going through the process of becoming Guard. But high visibility does work. But you know what high visibility in Dublin has achieved for the rest of rural Ireland? We've been discriminated against. Because how many guards came to Tipperary in the last rollout? One, yeah. One, yeah. Right? So high visibility works in Dublin. But somebody needs to say to Jim O'Callaghan, which I said on numerous occasions, high visibility in Dublin is one thing. What about Roscrea? What about everywhere else? What about other towns across Tipperary where there isn't enough guards? Why are the people in rural areas being discriminated against for Dublin?
All right, I must leave it there, but thanks for your time this morning, Alan. Thank you, and good morning
thanks,
to
man.
you. That's Tipperary's Deputy Alan Kelly speaking to us there from his office in Dublin. We'll take a break, back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.